Hey there, YouTube. Yes, Davidsen here again. So I'm on my workbench here, and I've got planes in front of me. Who would have thought, right? So I've got a couple number fours here that are going to be the subject of, well, a subject of this video. Um, these were sequential types. So one of them was, I think, type 15, and the other one's type 16. I don't know off the top of my head, but anyway, this one was made shortly after World War II began, and this one was made in the late 30s. That's easily signified because all the hardware on this thing is steel, because the brass was used for ammunition during the war. So the screw up here for the front knob and the screw for the tote, steel. The adjusting wheel, steel. And this guy is the older version, so brass depth adjusting wheel and brass screws on the tote and the front knob. Additionally, this one has a feature that I really like on planes, and that is the a frog adjusting screw back here. This guy does not have that, but don't let that deter you. I still got the mouth adjusted on this thing to absolute perfection, and you don't need that frog adjusting screw, but it just makes things easier. But anyhow, what I wanted to get into on these is I'm going to do a full-blown restoration on this guy, and that will include stripping the Japanning all the way off and re-Japanning it, if that's a term, because the finish is pretty shot on this thing. It's almost entirely gone behind the frog here, chipped off on the rear step here, scraped off along the side, and it's yeah, there's definitely rust going on up in the front, so the Japanning is gone up there. So this will get an even further in-depth restoration than the number 5 did. Furthermore, the rear tote is that's not recoverable. The number 5 was just cracked like a fracture, and so I was able to break it all the way and glue it. But this has been broken for a long time, and it's been twisted and rolled, and that's no longer a clean break where glue is going to do you a lot of good. So I'm just going to have to completely make a new tote for this one. But the rest of the restoration process will be the same. I will go ahead and my next video will be a sharpening video, because I skipped sharpening on this guy. I'm going to go ahead and do a standalone sharpening on this one, and that's because this blade is a disaster, and so it'll be a really nice example, or a demonstration guinea pig, if you will, for sharpening. Again, I skipped sharpening on the number 5 because that whole video series that I did, which was like a 6 or 7 part series, that was on restoration of a Type 13 number 5 plane. And yeah, that number 5 plane, the blade is not unique to it. Sharpening the blade is something that you do with all woodworking tools, right? So I wanted to just keep it focused on the plane. But anyway, I want to go off on a rant, because I've had a couple comments on my cast iron skillet restoration videos. One commenter said, quote unquote, "You destroyed that skillet, that beautiful 3-notch lodge. You absolutely destroyed the collector value of it, so on and so forth." And another one said, "Hey man, you know, you can do with your pans whatever you want, but yeah, I wouldn't dare do that on any of mine. You ruin the collector value of it, so on and so forth." And so they're bringing up a very important point. I'm not bashing them. They're bringing up a legitimate point of antique collector value. In my personal opinion, collectors destroy antiques. They destroy antiques because they would take something like this that was manufactured by skilled laborers back in the 1920s. They would take this tool and put it up on a display, never to be used on a piece of wood ever again for the rest of its life. The very purpose for which this thing was made was taking wood that looks like this and turning it into wood that looks like this. But a collector destroys the antique by condemning it to a display case where it will never do that again. That's the whole point of it being made. So you are taking all of that skilled labor from the early 1900s and telling them, well, yeah, nice job, guys. It didn't mean anything. Your plane maybe got used for 30 years and then sold to an antique store and then sold to a collector, and now it's going to sit on a display case. I think that's ludicrous. This thing was made to be used. And so that's why I buy antiques. I see an antique at a store and I feel like I can use it. I'm going to use it. So this is the skillet that I apparently destroyed. And if you ask me, this looks like everything but destroyed. When I purchased this antique, and you can see the original condition in which I found it on my very first YouTube video ever, the seasoning was a complete catastrophe on this thing. It was flaked off in very large areas, exposing the bare iron to rust. The backside of it was completely covered in creosote. You couldn't even read hardly the 7SK or the little H here. You could barely even tell that it had 3 notches in the fire ring. That doesn't look destroyed to me. Based on the steak that I've cooked on it and the chicken that I've cooked on it, it is most definitely not destroyed. It does its job phenomenally well. Omelets, pancakes, everything. This is not destroyed. Apparently somebody feels that it would be preferable for that thing to have ended up on some collector's display case or hung up at a Cracker Barrel restaurant above the fireplace, never to cook a meal again. When the original people that manufactured that thing back in the 1950s at Lodge, they intended that skillet to be sold to a husband and wife and to cook food for generations and generations and be passed on. Well, that didn't work out because that's not my family heirloom. So at some point in time, the family decided not to keep it. But I'm determined to continue using it for the rest of my life. So that thing's been cooking for some period of time, and as long as I'm alive, I'm gonna keep using it. This is a slightly different case. This was my grandmother's skillet. It's a number 3, small. It's good for about 2 eggs. The seasoning was not destroyed on this skillet. The seasoning was basically as you see it right now. The other day I cleaned it all out with soap and water, and there was some spots where it was pretty rough, and I used 800 grit sandpaper and water, and I wet sanded those areas, the seasoning down so it was smooth. I did not take it down to bare metal. I smoothed it out as best I could with the sandpaper. I'm very happy with how it turned out. And then I went ahead and took it to the stove and did a couple coats of seasoning, and I used it this morning to cook up an egg for a breakfast sandwich. I'm not going to strip this all the way down to bare iron because I don't think there's any point in that. So I did the minimum amount of work required to make this functional again. I will eventually strip all the creosote off of the back, just for 2 reasons. One, creosote is flammable. Houses burn down all the time because creosote buildup in the chimney catches fire and burns the entire house down. That's massively tragic. Well, I don't want this thing catching fire because this has massive creosote buildup on it. Also, underneath the creosote, there is information on who made this skillet and when. I can barely make out, looks like a S-I-O-N-E and a 0 with a hyphen on either side, and then a number down here, 10535, I think. And then there's like a cursive W up here and a very faint A done. But anyhow, I digress. I did the minimum amount of work necessary to make this thing functional. And that's also what I did on this one. I did the minimum amount of work necessary. Unfortunately with this one, that involves stripping it all the way down to bare iron. But I have absolutely no regrets whatsoever on that. I don't sell antiques. I buy them and I use them. This will be the first antique that I will ever part with. I'm going to restore this to the best of my abilities and give it away to a fellow Marine Corps veteran friend of mine, and because he does woodworking in his garage. And so this will be a gift to him as sort of a token of our friendship. I'm not going to sell it to him and try to get collector value out of it. I think that's ludicrous. So that's that's my take on antiques, and that will be my perspective on antique restorations as long as I'm around. That's not going to change. People are entitled to their opinions. Collectors are entitled to buy antiques and collect them, but and never to use them again. But my perspective is to purchase antiques that I can use and put them back into service. They were made to be used. They lost that job at some point in their existence. I came around and I put them back into use. That's how I see it. So, thank you again for watching this video. It's a touchy topic. People have strong opinions on it. I have strong opinions too because I'm very passionate about antiques. Yeah, you are totally entitled to your opinion. And I appreciate you expressing your opinions on my channel, but I just want everybody to know that I am not doing period correct restorations. I'm not doing restorations for the sake of selling this to a collector for an elevated value, a value above what I paid for it. That's not my goal at all. My goal is to use them. So, thanks again for watching. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and we will see you on the next video.